Hello, welcome to the NCGA FMC Agricultural Weather Outlook for March 30th, 2014. I'm John Felt. I'd like to welcome any new subscribers. I do this briefing every weekend, just give you a heads up on agricultural weather conditions for the next week or two. Well, let's look at the number of rain days, and this goes back the last 30 days, and this gives us some idea of areas that have been sort of active as far as rain and snow and other areas that have been pretty quiet. And if we look at the areas in green, we see the active areas. So right off, you can see that very active snow belt and very active over parts of the Great Lakes. But we've also seen this relatively dry area in the central part of the Corn Belt as well. So that's sort of the past 30 days. If we look at this last week, we see the upper Midwest was pretty quiet. We see North Dakota, Minnesota, brown, and that's saying not many precipitation days. And then we see the central Corn Belt, Missouri and Illinois, a little bit more active. So generally speaking, for the most part, a quiet week, but some areas did get some significant precipitation. So where did that precipitation fall? Well, areas in green here indicate a half inch or more of precipitation, and right along the Ohio River, southern Indiana and Ohio. Most likely that was the heaviest precipitation. I see a couple little areas of yellow there, and that's 2 inches. But also again in Wisconsin and Michigan, some active snow in that region. That area's liquid precipitation average about a half inch, but you bring that over to snow, and that can mean a lot of snow. Likewise over parts of Minnesota, not many snow days, but there was some snow, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. So if we look at the percent of normal for the last 7 days, what we see here are areas in yellow or red are areas that experience below normal precipitation. Areas in blue are above normal. So looking at the entire Corn Belt, what you do see for the last 7 days is that the Corn Belt averaged below normal precipitation with the exception of just a few spots. Now, if you look at this here, look at this in Missouri. See these little streaks here? Don't know how close I can draw them, but when we start seeing these streaks, I'm going to point out signs of spring that I'm seeing. These streaks here are thunderstorm streaks. There's a very different type of rainfall pattern you can see as we go from winter to spring. So we're going to be seeing that a lot more. Look how narrow they are. So we're getting some localized precipitation patterns, and you're going to see that well into the summer. So if you're right here, you might not have gotten anything, but if you're right here, you could have gotten some heavier precipitation. So a sign of spring. I know we're all waiting for that. It's been a long winter, but there's one sign right there. Now this certainly wasn't a sign of spring. Look at the snow. Quite a bit of light amounts of snow. Those are those little purple dots there. And the more significant snow I talked about earlier, it's centered in the Great Lakes, primarily north and northeast Wisconsin. That area in orange is 3 to 6. The area in green is 6 to 9 inches. So still some heavy snow within the upper Midwest Great Lakes region. If you want to see where the snow is on the ground still, take a look here. The darker blue is a heavier snow, but look at Ohio, the eastern Corn Belt. There's actually a modest amount of snow that occurred in that region still on the ground. Snow, with the exception of the upper Midwest, any snow that falls pretty much anywhere else on the Corn Belt is going to melt very quickly this time of year, so that's going to go very quickly this week. Water equivalent, this is something that I keep an eye out for, the potential for spring snowmelt flooding. Very clear, this is where the snow is right now. That's going to melt. This orange or this pink area here, that's water equivalent as much as 6 inches. So that's all going to melt probably in the next month, next 30 days. That's going to be coming down the Mississippi at some point in time, and that represents about 6 inches of liquid water equivalent. Now this is showing where the snow is currently melting. I've shown this the last couple briefings just to show you how we're going through these alternating freeze-thaw cycles. The red is saying that we're having very active melting going on. Look at Ohio. See how it's already beginning to start? And then these areas here in Indiana, this is going to erode and melt away very quickly. But it's starting to work on this snow band here. And what I'm seeing are these controlled melting, thawing, melting, thawing. And that's what I want to see. I want to see some of it get into the rivers, then sort of slow down again, get in the river, slow down again. But yet at the same time, I want to get that in before we get to our spring rain. So we're going to have a lot of melting in that region early this week, but we're also going to have more snow in that region as well. So for the last 7 days, temperatures, it's been frustrating getting temperatures to warm. We have this blue, and as long as we have this blue, That's representing 10 to 15 degrees below normal for the average. And as long as we have that, we're not going to have any gain in climatology of temperatures or growing degree days or soil temperatures. That's just going to inhibit the normal progression to some degree. So we've been seeing that for quite some time, but I think we're beginning to tampen that down. I'll show you some signs of that, how I think we're beginning to lose that. And remember last week I talked about the sudden stratospheric warming event. That is when we get these pushes of cold air sagging south. We've had them all winter long, a number of them, and it means the jet stream in the Arctic weakens. It lets that cold air down, and usually one of the signs of a transition from winter to spring is that last strong sudden stratospheric warming, and I think we've had that. Doesn't mean that we're not going to get more winter. We are our winter-like weather, but to me at least, it looks like we've sort of gone past that transition, and we're going to see more signs of spring weather than winter. Now, as far as stream flow goes, quick look, red is well below normal. So that's when we look at precipitation, soil moisture, stream flow, they all are interlinked. And we see here is a lot of below normal stream flow. And I work on spring snowmelt outlook. And one of the good things is if we look at the Missouri River Basin and even parts of the upper Mississippi, it's very low, so it can handle some extra water before flooding occurs. Okay, so this week we have a lot of changes. This is going to be an active week. Early this week, the jet stream's in blue, and it's bowing to the north. So when this is bowing to the north like this, pushes up to the north, that's going to bring significant warming to much of the Corn Belt. Now, by the end of the week, we're going to have this green pattern of jet stream, and that's a split flow. And when we get a split flow, oftentimes there's some energy down here in this area of the southern jet, and as it comes across, it picks up Gulf moisture and tries to bring it north, produces a lot of rain and severe weather. Now, it's early spring, so it's only going to bring it so far north. Again, another sign of spring, though. And I'll show you an example of that. This is an anomaly of the jet stream. Brown and yellow means that it's further north than usual or warmer. This is further south than normal and cooler. Here we go. We're getting these alternating pockets of warm and cold, and that's a sign of spring. We're also really diminishing these upper pools of cold air. That's what I meant about that sudden stratospheric warming beginning to really wind down. So this week we are going to have a front that's going through with the colder air pushing in, but ahead of that we're going to have some moisture, and this is yet another sign of spring. This is the dew point at the Earth's surface, which is 60 degrees. That's at deeper. You really begin to feel it when it gets to be 60 degrees. It's not the 70 degree, but it definitely feels like spring when you get this moisture in the air. And it does come all the way up into parts of Missouri, Illinois, southern Indiana, so it's beginning to push further north. And I think as we get into spring, we'll see these pushes of moisture come further and further north. Now, early spring, that front's going to sweep through and push it out. But at least that's another sign of spring, is as we get a battle between cold and warm, dry and moist. Now, for you new subscribers, during different times of year, I talk about different things. Precipitable water is very important to me. It's how much moisture, not just at the Earth's surface, like I showed in that dew point, but all the way up through the atmosphere. And this is a really good sign of heavy rain. So this is a high precipitable water here, 1.5 to 2, and that's in inches. And this is the axis later this week. This is towards the middle of the week. This is an axis looking at that precipitable water where the heaviest rain would be. And if we look at the forecast for the next 7 days, we see that it is fairly close to that axis. Front will be coming through, interacting with that. So we have a lot of liquid precipitation this week. But at the same time, this is in the colder air. We're going to have some snow this week as well. So it's going to be a very active week, generally speaking, starting towards the middle of the week and going towards the latter part of the week. I mentioned snow forecast. Here's the next 7 days. A significant, heavy, late season, early spring snow over parts of eastern North Dakota up into northern Minnesota. More modest snow over parts of Iowa and Wisconsin. I don't think that'll stay on the ground all that long. So we do have, in addition to that rain, we do have snow. As far as soil temperatures go, these are the current soil temperatures valid today. And you're going to see that there is going to be some movement northward. If I go into later this week, it looks to me like you sort of go back and forth. Here's today, here's later this week. And that cold air comes in, does sort of push it down in this area, but I think you're seeing some pushing further to the north of the 50-degree line in this area. So anywhere from southern Missouri, this is sort of the 50-degree line, we're going to see some warming this week. But I think with the alternating temperatures in spring, there's going to be some movement. But again, yet another sign of spring, a northward progression of these temperatures. So let's go through our sequence of temperature and precipitation, give you an outlook of what's going on. This is this week. As far as temperatures go, the battle between cold and warm, warms in yellow, colds in blue, and you can see this is sort of the average for the week. So the warm air works north, but then the cold air pushes down from the north, typical spring cold front. I did want to mention as far as growing degree days, this is towards the middle of the week. This is Thursday. I think I've pointed out 4 or 5 signs of spring. Because I know we're all looking for it, and it's probably not coming up in everybody's area, but I want to show you at least now. This is a base of 50 degrees. You begin to see some growing degree days begin to push north as well. So we're seeing some signs. It's not moving all that far north, but it is making that initial transition. Okay, week 2, April 4th through 9th. Temperatures, well, it looks like, unfortunately, it's going to be slightly cooler. I'm not seeing those signs like I've seen in the past of that real strong cold anomalies, but it does look like some cooler air will be pushing in across most of the region. And then on April 9th through 14th, I think at this time we really have tampened down these negative temperature anomalies. In this region here, they're beginning to shrink. The intensity has definitely come down, and now we're beginning to get warming over large parts of the Corn Belt. So it does look to me like by the middle of April, we're going to be getting a little bit more consistent back to climatology. Now, as far as precipitation, I mentioned this week, we're going to have a band of the active snow in this region, a little bit of snow in here, and here's your heavier precipitation this week, especially in the darker green. Now, week 2 right now looks fairly quiet. So week 2 could be a little bit on the cool side and on the quiet side. Yellow is saying below normal precipitation. Soil moisture outlook, quick. From one of the models I look at blue is showing increases in soil moisture. So because of the snow and the rain, much of the Corn Belt, except maybe for the far west, looks like it will be increasing soil moisture this week. Now, there are going to be a number of hazards this week. You can take a look for your area. Some of them are going to be below normal temperatures. Later, towards the middle part of the week, we have the chance for heavy snow, I mentioned, heavy precipitation, and even some severe weather in parts just south of the Corn Belt. So your takeaway points from today's briefing, well, in bits and spurts, we're transitioning into spring. We have active precipitation this week. We're going to have alternating pushes of cold air and warm air, and it looks like next week will be quieter. Now, thanks for listening to today's briefing. I'm getting my newsletter together. I'm going to be talking again about El Nino because it's really, a lot of changes are going on. I want to keep you up to date on that. So I'll be issuing that later on this week. I'm sure I'll be doing a midweek update with all the precipitation going as well. I'd like to hear from you. There's my email on here, and please pass this along to others. If you like this, if you find this useful while you're planning, tell your closest friends and neighbors, pass it along. They can sign up on bluewateroutlook.com. I have the NCGA logo. All you have to do is click on that, and I'd really like to get some more subscribers as we get into this critical season. As always, nice talking with you. Hope I hear from you. I'll be talking with you again next week.